Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the College in Israel webinar. We're going to give everyone a minute to get settled and then we'll get started. While everyone is joining, I'm going to launch a little poll to help us understand who's here and what we're hoping to get today out of our session. Start in about 2 or 3 minutes. But just a little housekeeping while we get settled. Feel free to ask questions in the Q&A chat box on your screen. We do have a bunch of questions that were asked during the registration process. We will try to incorporate whatever comes through into the conversation. And if there's anything we don't get to during the presentation, we will try to follow up one-on-one to the best of our ability, or you can reach out to us and we'll share all the contact information at the end of the event. Get started on that. And thank you for the people who thought there'd be sushi here. Appreciate those responses. That was to have a little fun Sunday morning. All right, Shippy, if you're ready, we'll get started.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Shippy Friedman. I work for JLIC in Israel, and I want to introduce College in Israel to you. Maybe it's your first event, maybe you've been with us before. Either way, College in Israel is a program of JLIC. JLIC has been on North American campuses now, supporting Jewish life on campus for 25 years. And we're now on 10 campuses in Israel as well, which started back in 2017. And since last year, we have been helping share information with an audience in North America and other places as well about college in Israel, how to get here and to study and what to choose to study and how to connect with JLIC campuses, with JLIC communities on campus. And we're here today to share experiences of 5 students who are part of our JLIC communities with you. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce or ask our 5 panelists to introduce themselves. We're going to go through questions together, and then at the end, we'll share some more resources with you all. So, Neely, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Neely Fisher, originally from Denver, Colorado. I went to Denver Academy of Torah for high school. I was planning on going to Brandeis for college, but during my year in Israel, I went to Midrashat Harova and spent time learning and decided to stay in Israel, and went to Reichman University, still studying there, in English in the international school, and I'm studying BA in communications and specializing in user interface and user experience.
Thank you so much, Paris.
Hi, my name is Paris Levin. I'm originally from Bergenfield, New Jersey. I went to MTA for high school, and I then came to Israel for 2 years in yeshiva. In my second year in Yeshivat HaKotel, I decided to start looking into other colleges. I was initially enrolled in Yeshiva University, and I decided that I actually wanted to stay in Israel sooner than in my 30s, 40s. So I started looking into options staying here now, and my first choice was Machon Lev, so right now I'm in my 3rd year studying computer science in Machon Lev, and I live on campus in Givat Mordechai in Yerushalayim.
Thank you so much. Esty.
Hi, I'm Esty Wasserstein. I'm from Silver Spring, Maryland. I went to JDS for high school, which most people won't know. I went to Nishmat for Midrasha and decided there to stay. Then did Shirat Lumi, and then Mechinat Olim at Bar Ilan, and I'm now in my 3rd year studying biotechnology there. And I live in
Great.
Givat Shmuel.
Thank you, Ariella.
Hi, I'm Ariella. I grew up in Riverdale and I went to Heschel High School in Manhattan. I also went to Nishmat, I think a few years older than you. And then I did 2 years of the Army. And after the Army, I did my first degree in Jewish history and European history at Tel Aviv. And now I live in Jerusalem and I'm in my master's at Hebrew.
Great, thank you so much. And Aaron.
Hi, I'm Aaron. I'm from New York. I went to Ramaz for high school. I came straight here from high school. I'm now in my 2nd year at Tel Aviv University. I'm part of the dual degree program with Tel Aviv University in Columbia. So next year I'm going back to New York to study at Columbia. Right now I'm studying psychology and minoring in entrepreneurship and innovation.
Great. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here, and I hope that you're ready to answer some questions with the crowd, for the crowd. So we're going to try and focus today on 4 different categories. This is based on the questions that many of you submitted in advance with your registration, but like Yessi said, you're welcome to submit more questions as the hour goes along. The 4 categories that we're going to touch on is 1, Hebrew language and culture, 2, degrees and programs, 3, tell me about Jewish life and campus life, and 4, post-college life and finding a job after college. So do think about when you're asking your questions, keep in mind that we'll probably try and answer it during that section of the program. So let's start off with one of the most fundamental questions that people consider when they're thinking about college in Israel. Should they study in English or should they study in Hebrew? So we have some panelists here who study in Hebrew and some who study in English. So I think this might be an interesting conversation. Who would like to start off?
I can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I study completely in Hebrew. I did the Mechinat Olim beforehand, which I think was a huge, huge, huge help for me. Just being able to actually pay attention in class and follow completely along in Hebrew. I do study biology, which is a very easy one to do in Hebrew because all the words are just in English with an accent. But Bar Ilan, I don't know if it's everyone, but I know for us, we get all of our tests translated. We're allowed to submit essays in whatever our native language is. Primarily it's English, but they also let Arabic happen. We have 2 classes a year that are required to be in English, just that's how biology is here. But it's very doable to do in English. In Hebrew, I haven't had such a difficult time. I think the Mechina really helped me be able to do it in Hebrew. And the transition was a tiny bit hard, but thank God, totally okay and totally doable. And yeah.
Thank you. Ariella, do you want to speak to studying in
Yeah,
Hebrew?
yeah, for sure. So I'm in the humanities, so I have quite a language heavy degree, but the truth is we're lucky as English speakers because to be a professor, you need to have pretty sophisticated English. So they let you, submit papers, projects. You can answer Hebrew questions on your test that might be written in Hebrew, but you can answer in English because that's just the universal academic language. In Malasot, you're lucky if you're an English speaker, if you're an American. It's just the universal language. Whereas if you're French, you can't say the same thing. And most academic articles can be found in English, even the ones that have been translated in Hebrew that your professor gives out to you, you can easily find in English because chances are the original was in English. So if you put in the work, it's possible. And again, you're lucky because you're an English speaker. I'll say that you need to be able to understand lectures, but there's also so much in university that's self-study, and just yourself making sure that you have read material, know what happened in lectures. And there's so many resources like Google Translate whenever you don't have a word, and so much material on the internet to supplement that's in English. So I think it's definitely doable and it opens more opportunities, I think.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody, Neil, you want to speak to the
Yeah.
advantages of studying in
I
English?
can speak to the other side. So I
Good.
definitely was not as brave as SD or Ariella starting school. I think starting school in Hebrew was really intimidating to me, and knowing that I grew up in America and was going to go to college in America and then totally shift my life and didn't have in mind that I was going to go to college in Israel felt very scary to do in Hebrew. I also think with my parents, they were a little hesitant just because in their minds they wanted maybe me to go back after college. And ultimately at this point I've made Aliyah and I'm staying. So I think studying wise, it's been very smooth and easy transition to studying English. I do think though what Ariella and Esty are speaking to is there really is an advantage also to learning in Hebrew just because it makes it a smoother transition into the country. And maybe starting school is a little harder, but ultimately your Hebrew is going to be more fluent. Like they're probably much more fluent than I am. And ultimately, like I get my Hebrew in other places rather than in school. So I think there are definitely pros and cons. But I also would say like most of the schools, a lot of them have like more Hebrew programs and then some English programs also. So most places are able, you can live in one spot and also go to school there in either language, which is cool.
I also want to add to that and share that this Israel Student Authority, in Hebrew, that's the Minhal Studentim, which is the university branch of the Ministry of Aliyah and Integration, saw that people who studied in English didn't always have enough tools for working in the Hebrew workforce. Again, really depends on the field. Some people really would have those tools, and some people needed a little more. And they've been working with a few universities to start these multilingual programs where you start off studying in English for 1 or 2 years, and it's very intense. You take Ulpan, Hebrew language courses, and then you transition into Hebrew language tracks. So programs like that have started this year at Bar Ilan, next year at the Technion, Paris, you're nodding, right, also at Machon Lev, and
I think Tel Aviv University also is starting.
and Tel Aviv University. So those are, that's another option that none of you on the panel even really had the option to consider because it's so new. So you really see so much is changing every year, which is exciting. And we'll share resources on the end. You'll be able to see on our site where you can see which programs are in English, which are in Hebrew, which are in English and Hebrew. Anybody want to speak to the question of Hebrew, of Israeli culture and integrating into Israeli society? Is that something that you have access to on your campus? Is your university helping you make that transition if you're considering staying in Israel, or are they just giving you access even if you're just here on a student visa, but you want to experience Israel a little bit more directly? What is that like?
I think I can, there's definitely, in terms of campus life, there's a bridge to cross. There's a big age gap usually. I think the average age on campus is like 26. So there's not so much integration between international students and Israeli students. I found ways to do it with extracurriculars, so I have some Israeli friends. In terms of like Israeli life, though, I'm in Tel Aviv. I'm like a 30-minute bus from the center, so we definitely have access to all of Tel Aviv and like all of the Israeli culture. Making Israeli friends can be difficult because everyone our age is in the army, but it's like possible. It's an effort and there's a bridge to cross, but it's totally possible.
I'll definitely add to that. At the very least, on Machon Lev's campus, I think for every campus, there's a little bit of a different feel. For instance, there is definitely a large age gap, but for programs that have like, for instance, our program has a Beit Midrash, so I would be learning in a shir that could be in Hebrew or English. If I'm learning in a Hebrew shir, I'm definitely going to interact with a lot of Israelis. Our campus is smaller, so you obviously do have a lot of more interaction with people, and anyone who wants to take, as Aaron said, there's a lot of extracurriculars or a lot of opportunities to meet different people. So anyone who really wants to get involved in the Israeli culture has that opportunity. There's also plenty of groups of just Anglos where someone who doesn't necessarily want to transition to a different culture certainly does not have to.
I'll just chime in also on how professors treat new immigrants or international students. They're really accommodating. I think a lot of people who study in Hebrew get very stressed out and people probably think I'm much less intelligent than I really am. And if only I could speak in English because I would sound so much more sophisticated. Nobody's expecting you to know Hebrew. They're surprised that you're there. And they're like really appreciative of the efforts you make and they're very impressed. So nobody's judging you the way that a lot of Americans might judge people with an accent in English. They're not really judging you and they're just impressed that you're able to make the effort. You get extra time as a new immigrant. I remember once I was taking a Zoom test because I was in my first degree in COVID, and my professor sent me a message and I started to get very scared. What is it? Why did he write to me? He said, I just want to remind you, you have a lot more time than you think. You have the extra time, the benefit. So they look out for you, and like they're on your side and they're just very impressed that you're making this transition. So I definitely wouldn't worry about professor support.
Thank you so much. Yes, did any questions come in about Hebrew language and culture specifically?
You sort of addressed it with the the age. I think Aaron addressed it, like the age gap and people haven't done the army. So
Great, so let's
we're
move
gonna-
on to the next category, which is major one, degrees and programs. What do you study? Everybody said at the beginning what they studied, but we'll hear a little bit more about that now. And how did you come to choose that? Maybe let's start actually with a little bit of a lighter one. What inspired you to come study in Israel? Some of you might have addressed this a little bit in your intro.
can-
Neil, go ahead.
Yeah, I can start. So I think like studying in Israel was something to me in high school that was very foreign, which I mentioned before as to why I studied English. And I think I came like during my gap year to Herzliya for one Shabbat, right, where Reichman is, and I experienced the community, and that was like the first thing that I think grabbed me. It's very vibrant, young, fun community, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like I didn't realize there are normal communities in Israel, with young Olim and people similar to me, and then I started looking into IDC and sorry, Reichman University. IDC is an old name, but I started looking into it and I saw that there are a lot of really cool majors and programs that could work for me that I thought would work for me similar to America. Just prefacing, Israel specific doesn't function a lot of the way most American universities do or other universities. You have to choose your major coming in. You can't, unless you're in, I think Aaron's is a little different, but for the most part, if you want to study business, you can't decide in your second year, you're going into the business school. So I think for me at first, that was something a little daunting because I was that kid who was undecided and didn't know what I wanted to do, which is a little bit why I studied communications because I felt like it was a broad enough degree that I could take it in a lot of different ways. But I do think like it also pushes you to be like, okay, what do you want to do with your life? Which is really cool. And it gives you the independence that I think a lot of Israeli culture ultimately gives individuals.
Great, thank you for making that really important point. And Aaron mentioned earlier, many international students are much younger than Israelis who are coming to college at age 26, 27 after the army, after they've already explored a little bit and maybe built up a little bit more personal identity. And to choose a major at that point, it's you had a little bit more life experience, so it is a bit of a challenge. Anybody else want to speak to that? Either why did you come study in Israel, or you could also tie in your specific major. Ariella, I see you nodding.
So I did the army before I did university, but I'm a researcher in Holocaust studies. Please God, I want to be an academic in Jewish history. So for me, studying in Israel, other than the fact that I made Aliyah, did the army, was a no-brainer and has been like really an amazing experience because where else is quality to study Jewish history, if not in Israel. The amount of courses and the specific courses that one can take in the world of Jewish studies in Israel is really phenomenal. I'll also say that a lot of people think Israelis are just very chill and casual and informal, and they think that might translate to the rigor in university. It's also because Israel doesn't have the best high schools in the world because people go right after to the army. Israeli university is really intense. They work you really hard, and because the major that you go into, they really treat that as a discipline. You don't have to take, which is also great because you don't have to take math courses if you're a humanities student, which was amazing for me as someone who struggled with math in school. But you have to take, at least in Israeli programs, like it's very standard to take 10 courses a semester. So I think that's very important to know. It's a very intense degree. I see SD nodding. I'm sure especially in biotech, it's like that, but your exam period is long. They treat you as an adult. They're not going to take any excuse about, oh, this is too much work, Like they really treat you, this is your discipline. You don't just take 101 history courses. They take history workshops and you have a very systematic methodological degree. So anyone who's in the humanities, I think I've had an amazing experience, but it's not an easy degree. They cram you with a lot of credits and each course demands a lot of work. But at least in my experience, I've taken the most amazing courses and it's been really worth it. But don't think that, yada balagan, Israeli degrees are easy. They're quite intense. I see SD nodding.
I decided to do university in Israel because I knew I wanted to work here and I knew that getting the protectia from college was really important for me. What Ariella was saying, yeah, I take 15 courses this semester. It's a lot, but it's good, and thank God not all of them have finals. But I did that I primarily stayed in Israel and did my degree here so that I'd be able to work. And like, thank God I've already been able to work now in two really amazing labs, one of which I should be continuing to my master's and PhD there. But that was a huge benefit to me, was staying and then being able to get help through each step and not having to like start again when I made Aliyah. I made Aliyah 5 years ago, so yeah.
The university is really cheap in Israel / free for Orlean.
Aaron, do you want to jump in?
Sure. So I can start with my story of why I wanted to study in Israel is not so interesting. My mom is Israeli and all my friends were doing gap years. I just happened to not find a gap year that made me really excited. And then I got into this program and I was really excited. So I came here straight from high school and this is my second year. I think Tel Aviv University, at least the international school, is pretty different from what everyone's described. There is a lot of room to change your major. Um, the people who are here for 3 years have even more room. I'm only here for 2 years, so it works a little bit differently, but I did manufacture my schedule in a way where I was able to change my minor like 3 times. Um, but I think the international school is pretty small and there's not so many options, but Tel Aviv University is an amazing school and you can definitely take advantage of that. It's one of the best schools in the world. And so I think like myself and a lot of my classmates have definitely capitalized on that. There's incredible research opportunities. Like 6 professors just got a huge grant for research and I've already reached out to some of them. So there's definitely ways to like capitalize on being in this amazing campus, despite the fact that like it can be difficult to change your major and there's only like 7 different major options. Like there's so much you can do with your time here.
Great.
I just wanted, sorry, to touch for a second on something Aaron was saying that was also in the Q&A about master's programs and what to do after school if you decide not to stay in Israel. Most of these schools, I don't know if Machon Lev is, but I know Hebrew U and Bar Ilan and Tel Aviv and Reichman University are all they're established universities that are recognized worldwide. So I think that's also something nice to know of if you don't know that you want to make Aliyah going in, you can still decide you want to live in Israel, go to college in Israel, and move like decisions after that. I have a lot of friends who are studying psychology in Reichman and are going back to the States to do their master's program. And I know that like they're very helpful with that. And Hebrew U, for example, they also do that. Tel Aviv works with Columbia, Bar Ilan. So I think also that's something to keep in mind of like you don't have to necessarily know that you want to live in Israel the rest of your life. Or if you know you want to do a master's in America, but you want to do your undergrad in Israel. Like there are ways to do both and not have it be the most like biggest and stressful decision. Like it's comforting to know you could do it all.
Yeah, all the degrees are transferable, Lev as well. Parrots, do you want to jump in?
Sure.
Degree
I'll
transferability. Oh,
I'll
SC
add
did?
add from a similar level that Aaron said, but from the other side. I didn't necessarily have I intended to stay here already from the time I was in yeshiva. The program at Machon Lev, first off, Derech Agav, as Nili said, Machon Lev is also recognized internationally. It's not a university because we don't have sufficient research facilities and we accept everyone, which is a rule. We don't accept everyone. We accept only Jews. So that's a rule that not all that universities cannot abide to. They have to accept everyone. We can do whatever we want with acceptance. But Machon Lev's program is built in a way that, at least for the international guys, people are able to transition from a yeshiva or seminary lifestyle into the workforce a little more smoothly. The program is built so that you still have your Siddharim or classes in the morning that are Limudei Kodesh, that are religious studies, and then we move into classes in the afternoon with also activities built in so that it gives the guys a little more support, a little more comfort in transitioning to the Israeli world. So it wasn't too much of a difficult decision for me to make to decide I'll spend a little more time in Israel. And for some guys who have already decided, or to stay in the country, it gives them that platform to stay. And the guys who haven't decided yet, it gives them a little more time to make that decision.
Great. I'd like to move on to talk about the admissions process, the applications process, unless there's something that we could expand on that we already sort of touched on. We're ready to go. We can come back to some of these big issues. We brought up a lot of really, really important things just in these last few minutes. So I think some of our viewers would like to hear a little bit about what it is like to apply to schools. Was it a challenging process? If you can compare it to the process of applying to US schools because you applied to both, then feel free to make that comparison. What did you need to send in terms of scores, and did you need to write or interview, etc.?
I can speak to it post-COVID. I graduated in 2021, so I know that I was like taking testing, standardized testing in 11th grade, and then in 12th grade, like mid 11th grade, COVID happened and schools became test optional in the States. So I'm not exactly sure if it's the same that it was when I applied, but when I was applying to Reichman specifically, scores were optional. And the way you apply is to specific schools, which I think it is. And also it's like you applied to the School of Communications, the School of Business, the School of Psychology. And there's no like common app like there is in the States. For college in Israel, you have to apply to specific ones. But I'd say I think at least at Reichman, most of the degrees are pretty like not so hard to get in. If you went to school, you did pretty well in high school, you did fine. Recommendations, they like to accept a lot of people. And it's a pretty calm application process. You need like your high school transcript, an essay. I think that might be it. Like I don't think the process here is as hard, but also I think Bar Ilan might be a little trickier. So it definitely depends on the school.
Right, and it's
Ireland's
also going to depend
definitely-
Hebrew versus English, so we'll hear about that. Reichman still is test optional for next year. Some of the schools definitely do requires SATs. Go ahead, Esty.
Bar Ilan is definitely different. Bar Ilan, first of all, the application process is so much later. I applied to my degree in May, maybe June even. Which was I was freaking out because I was like, wow, it's so late. And everyone was like, wow, you're already applying like Pesach time. That was crazy for them. I had to take the L, which is a Hebrew standardized test. I then ended up doing the Mechina anyways, but to get into the sciences, it's a tiny bit more difficult. We don't have any essays or anything like that, but they are pretty selective, and it's based on the psychometry score. And so whatever your ACT or SAT translates to, it's like super dependent on that. Bar Ilan does accept both ACT and SAT scores. You just have to send it over officially, which is a little bit of a pain, but not so hard. Then you also just need to send in your transcript. Not so hard, but it's definitely different from America.
Anyone else?
I think it also really depends on the subject. Like I know for Hebrew U, if you want to study law, you want to study something like computer science, you know, the SAT that they would demand or the APs are very, very high. But in another subject, it can be significantly lower. So I think for universities like Tel Aviv Hebrew U, the scores, the process is very easy, but this like how high of a score you need to send is quite dependent on the subject.
I think what I can say is, I don't know anything about the application process for TAU International because my program's application was totally different and it all went through Columbia. I think the only thing we had to send to TAU directly was like a picture of our transcript. But I will say, like, you definitely don't have to apply to something specific. Like, they might make you mark down a major, but I don't think like the score is affected at all because you can change your major, minor, or any of your two other tracks at any point.
I'm noticing that the Machon Live experience is a little different from the other universities. Machon Live doesn't, and I believe this is the same for Machon Tal, the sister school. We don't care about the SAT, psychometry score, or anything like that. As I said before, they just accept Jews. So as long as you have all the papers like your Bagrut or high school transcript or anything like that, anyone should be able to get in. As far as I understand, a lot of people do end up either switching to an easier major or something that's a little more much into them, um, uh, based on what they find to be more difficult or whatnot, simply because they don't realize that, because anyone can get into Machon Lev, that doesn't necessarily mean that everything's easy here. Someone mentioned before that the degrees in Israel are very hard and not to be underestimated. That is no exception to Machon Lev. So people do get that either misinformation or they're misled, but anyone can get into Machon Lev essentially.
Wow,
Okay.
okay.
Say, yeah,
Go
key
ahead.
takeaway, don't be stressed. They all work out. It's each one. And I think like emphasizing what Esty said, like really I have friends who applied in July, starting after the Chagim. Like schools here start after the Chagim. You have time, you want to decide in your gap year, you can do that. You want to decide in high school, you can defer. Like it's calm and it's not the same level of stress. Like some of the applications are hard or easy, but ultimately it's like totally a different world and you have plenty of time.
A question here
Greg
that Neely,
mentioned-
maybe you,
Sorry.
I think there's a question that Neely would be great to answer about how you handled the deferral during your gap year when you made the decision to stay in Israel, but you had already committed to, I think you said Brandeis.
Yeah, definitely. So I applied early decision, so I kind of also like can double answer that. I emailed them asking them to defer another year. And they told me like because I applied early decision, yes, but I wasn't gonna get my deposit down. The deposit I had put back down. I have friends who didn't apply early decision and did get their deposit back. But I don't know anyone who's had a hard time. Like if you email them and tell them you're not coming, they can't really do much about it. And ultimately, I also know there are some schools that you could defer another year and take your transfer, like your credits from a school and bring them back to that university. So it's a pretty easy process, I'd say. You just kind of have to be in touch. Like if the school tells you, I guess probably like in February or March, they'll ask you to put down your deposit for the next year. You have to let them know, like either I'm not coming or I'd like to defer again.
Great. The question also came up about if you do the Army first, when should you apply to college? Is that something that Ariella you want to answer in a general way?
I think most Israeli universities you can't defer, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I think that's I think there might be some that would freeze your studies, but would there really be a point to doing that? It makes more sense to apply after. Maybe if you
No.
change your mind. We've
Yeah.
seen JLIC
It depends
community
what you
students
do.
who leave and do the Army in the middle of their studies, but that wasn't the plan to begin
For
with.
Yeah,
most
I would say
schools,
most Israelis don't. What did you want to say? Sorry.
no, I was gonna say one of most schools, if you want to freeze your studies for the Army, most are fine with that and will let you do that. And then on the other hand, Ariel, I think you were saying this of like you touched on this earlier of most people in Israel go to school after the Army. So oftentimes you don't even know what you want to study. Like maybe going in you thought you were gonna want to study psychology, and after the Army you're really interested in humanities. So I think like there's a big growth process in the Army. You could speak to it more, but
Yeah, no, for sure. I just think it's like so not like Israelis, they finish school, they might do something before the Army, like work, they do the Army, they work, they travel, they do the psychometry, which is like the SAT in Israel, and then they apply. Like they might be thinking about it throughout that path, those years. But it's just it's like deferring is a very American thing. Whereas in Israel, as people attested to it, you can literally sign up after the semester has begun. Like I've had times where whatever, some things happen, and I've signed up for classes pretty late. And like they'll enable you to do that. I said that the Israeli degree, like it's very difficult and intense, but that kind of baragan atmosphere in Israel actually really does is really relevant for when it comes to signing up and like entering a semester late. You have up until 4 weeks into the semester to join the semester, which is a really crazy stat. Deferring, don't worry about it. You can do it. I recommend doing it in the summer, doing it in May, but that's more of an American thing, I think.
Right, which is why at Tel Aviv University, Aaron, right, you had to apply in a US cycle of application, right? You couldn't apply this September before you started in October.
Yeah, it was a full US cycle, so our applications finished in like December, I think. And then also on the topic of deferral, I'm pretty sure Tel Aviv University is like really chill with it. I know in my program you can take up to 3 years off at any point, but I am almost certain I've heard like Tel Aviv University students like, deciding to pause and come back, and like they're pretty chill with how they let with the sequence in which you do your semesters.
Somebody also asked Aaron a question for you specifically. Did you consider staying in Israel and not going back to Columbia?
So I never considered fully staying. I thought about taking a gap in between Tel Aviv and Columbia to join the army. My mom was not at all for it, like not at all. So it's not going to happen. But there are people who have done it. There was even someone who went to do a semester at Columbia and then like applied as a transfer only to Tel Aviv University. For me, we have such a limited amount of majors here. There's things that I want to study at Columbia, so I'm definitely going to end up at Columbia. So I haven't considered fully staying, but I definitely am not super excited to leave like amazing Israel weather and culture and like go back to snow and the cold. Um, but I read the question and it asked about anti-Semitism also, and I think that's definitely a real concern and it's a valid concern. For me, it was never such a concern. It doesn't get to me the way that I think it does to other people, which is totally fair. Like I have friends who have been really affected by it. So I can definitely say like it's a real concern for people. For me, I never thought about it as a reason to stay here.
Right, thank you. Esty, did you want to speak about rolling admissions?
So most of the admissions are rolling admissions, so you do find out relatively soon after you apply. At least that was how it's for me and my friends. They very rarely are running out of spots by the end, but it's not that you apply by one date and get in by another. You just kind of find out whenever they'll email you, or sometimes they don't email you and you'll figure out soon. But that, yeah.
I just
Right.
want to touch upon the anti-Semitism topic. Um, I think you're totally right, Aaron. It affects people in very different ways, but I will say something nice because this is about studying in Israel. Something nice about studying in Israel is that it's unfortunate that we need this. It's tragic that we need this, but whenever I get off the bus and I enter Hebrew, I give in my ID. Immediately, the first thing I see is a huge banner that says bring them home now. And you enter the library and there is I don't want to say memorial, there's a table that honors any hostage or any victim that has studied at Hebrew, and anyone who has a parent or a family member in the faculty. There are yellow ribbons everywhere. There's constantly like homages honoring the hostages, the victims, and it's tragic that we need that, but something that I really don't take for granted is as soon as I enter my academic space, especially someone who wants to be in academia, just immediately knowing with our people, and knowing that they're putting that at the forefront and I don't have to be facing, an assault on my people. Rather, I know that it's affecting everyone and we're all in this together is an amazing comfort.
Right. The reason that we're really here, these sessions really came about because of so much more interest after October 7th, unfortunately. I want to just add in another small question to this, once we're in this kind of practical section of the hour. Did you try to get any credits from APs that you took? Did anybody succeed in that? The degrees are generally very focused, so it's not so common necessarily to get so many credits. Did anybody have any experience with that?
So I can at least speak for Machun Lev. I took calculus A, B, and BC in high school. I was not able to get credit even for calculus 1. The math, for instance, and a lot of the courses, they teach at a higher level here. So by the time you get here, most of the courses that they'll be offering are not going to be at the same level that you took them in high school. At the very least, for those who may have college credits from other colleges in America, usually those transfer nicely. At least at Machon Lev, I was able to get credit for some courses I took in YU when I was on their campus in high school. But in general, they don't accept credits for APs. At the very least, you could skip a course, but you wouldn't get credit for it. You'd get an exemption.
And I'm glad that you answered the transfer question also, because that came up. Ariella, yeah.
Israeli academics are quite snobby in ways that they do not need to be. So they think, oh, your APs, your American credit. No, no, no. You actually need, because you're coming from the American system, you need to take what we're called hashlamot, or a lot of people have to take mechina because they think your transcript, your APs, they don't match up to the Israeli bagrut, which is it's really false. It's actually much better at the most Jewish day schools. But I think you need APs often to be able to get in because Israelis have their bagrut, which is like their matriculation. So you could take history, math, English, Hebrew, science, bio, physics. So oftentimes for them to be able to know what like to balance what your equivalent, I guess, of a report is for the Israeli bagrut system, they often need the AP scores. And in Hebrew, I know that if you have like 4 APs and they're all good scores, you don't need to take the mechina if you don't want to, which can save you a year of mechina, and you can just enter your degree. But Israelis are quite they're quite specific about what credits you need to be able to receive a degree.
So for us, you can use AP credits as Cleli courses. We have both Cleli courses and Yadru courses that are required on top of a degree for most degrees. And it's just to make it a certain amount of hours that you have for your degree. So I know that APs can count as Cleli courses, but they can't ever take away from your degree courses.
Yeah, I
Thank
also
you.
think something
Yeah.
Ariella was saying, it's all very specific to each university. Like I know like Reichman University is sometimes really good. If you are studying psychology, you took AP Psych, they'll pass you out. But it just depends on which course, or if it's the exact same and they need to see, like you took statistics, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But at the same time, you want to transfer credits from another university, sometimes it'll go to general electives and sometimes not. Like Israel isn't, it's hard because sometimes it's not one concrete system and line that they're always going to follow, and sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. But typically, I think most schools will try to help use your APs in some capacity, but it's not the same as in the States.
Great. Let's mention the cost quickly because somebody asked that in the chat. I don't know that we even need to have so much discussion. I'll just mention that these programs cost. The question was specifically for non-Olim in recognition of the fact that if you do make Aliyah, then they'll cover the cost of like an Israeli price of a degree. But if you go to a more expensive program, then they'll only cover that smaller amount. So the programs will cost around $4,000 to $5,000 a year, such as Nachon Lev, Bar Ilan, Hebrew U, if you're in the Israeli programs, Reichman and Tel Aviv University, more like 17, 18, and that's before room and board. But that doesn't necessarily add so much, but you know, it would really depend where you were and if you were dorming or if you were in an apartment, if you were sharing with roommates or not, and what your personal expenses were. Anybody want to add a flavor to that? Go ahead.
There's also Minhala Studentim, which is a thing in Israel that works with students in order to help you get scholarships. So it's like you do certain hours of volunteer and they'll take some money off of your the tuition, and they work with you, and it's different case to case from each student, how much people make, how like flexible they are, works on that.
For Olim though.
For I think people on student visas also can use it.
Okay.
You just have to show it.
I-
At least at Reichman you can.
Okay, interesting.
I think Ariella might have some insight on this, but as far as I'm aware, if you choose to study in like the regular Tel Aviv University, it's much cheaper. I think it's in the range of like normal Israeli universities. The international school is like somewhere around 20,000 a year. Still much cheaper than American universities though.
And I think the Israeli school, if you study in Hebrew, and even if you don't make Aliyah, it's dirt cheap, like less than 9,000 shekel a year. It also depends on how many courses you take. Like that's how they it's really, really cheap. Like it's
Right.
last
If you go
like
to an Israeli program, but you're not Israeli, there's a small additional 30% or it's a little bit expensive, but not so significant, right?
like Israeli universities are less than I'm sorry, I'm not getting the right number, but I know it's less than 10,000 shekel, at least Tel Aviv or Hebrew. Like it's funny.
Bar Ilan is, I think, Bar Ilan is 11,000 shekel a year for non-Olim.
Wow.
It's about 10 for Olim.
Emphasis
Right.
on shekel.
Shekel, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. And somebody also asked about health insurance. So you can't come to Israel and be on a student visa without having health insurance. It's required. So all these programs will help you sign up for health insurance, which maybe it's about $1,000 a year if you have to do one of these travel abroad types. If you're an OLED, then you can sign into the HMOs, and then it's even without cost. So anything to add there? Let's move on. We got through two major topics, but this second topic really expanded because what we're studying and the process of getting to that point is so much of the core of what we're here to talk about. But I do want to move on to our third category, which is to tell me about campus life and Jewish life. Our fourth category, post-college life, we actually did touch on a bit, but maybe at the end we'll share more about that. If we spoke a little bit about transferring the degree to the US, but we could talk more about jobs at the end. But I would love to hear from all of you. Let's start with the question of organized Torah classes. Is that something that you can get in your program? Somebody asked in the question, is there something like YU that has a dual curriculum? So let's hear from Peretz and Esti, because Bar Ilan and Lev and Tal really have developed programs, and then we can hear what it's like in other settings. Go ahead.
I'll speak first, I suppose. So I initially, when I was looking into staying in Israel, I was looking into the YU Israel program. It didn't end up starting the year that I began college, but I started looking into Machon Leib, and I reasoned whatever YU Israel could have been at that time, it would not have been better than what Machon Leib is right now, because Machon Leib was established and whatnot. We have a Beit Midrash of around 12 to 13 shiurim. 2 of them are English, 2 of them are French, all of the other ones are Israeli. Rav Rimon stopped giving shiur this year, but all of his staff are phenomenal, and the Rabbanim give phenomenal shiurim. I've jumped around a little bit, but morning Seder is from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. I know at Machon Tal they have classes for the Limudei Kodesh as well in the morning, similar to a seminary program. We also have in coordination with the JLIC, we have a night Seder program as well. We have Bayit Cham every week, we have night Seder 3 nights a week, and we have a Mashmar Thursday nights. There's a lot of programming, there's a lot of shiurim given from guest speakers and whatnot every couple of weeks. So definitely Jewish life-wise, Machon Leib, I feel like is an exception just because we only have Jews on campus, but it definitely feels like a YU experience. I can say that confidently because I lived on YU's campus for 4 years. But the campus life is definitely very lively, and Jewish life is definitely very strong there. So yes, the program was intended to be something of a Chatzi Yeshiva program. So I think Machon Leib did that very well.
Beautiful, thank you. Esti.
Bar Ilan, so we're all required to take Yadut classes. It's part of every degree. So I don't remember how many credits we have to take. I got out of them very quickly due to Midrasha, and I did the Mechina, and I also was a Talmud major my first year. So we also have that ability. But we have both the Midrasha and the Kollel, which are 2 entire buildings of our campus, and we have classes there pretty much from 7 a.m. till 8 p.m. every day. Through the JLIC, we have Sunday nights, we have Torah and Pizza, which you could do for credit. And then we also have Torah Tuesdays on Tuesdays, which also you could do for credit. We have programs through the Midrasha and the Kollel where you could sign on, get paid, also learn, and it also counts as credits, which is super fun. I was also a Talmud major for my first year and a half-ish. And so we have a lot of programs through that you could do different, do like degrees. And so we have the ability to do that. And yeah, minions pretty constantly. We have 4 shuls on campus. So yeah,
Also,
we have a lot of that.
something cool about making Aliyah is also you're going to be exploring a Judaism that isn't just the day school Judaism that you've been exposed to. Like, also because I did the army, but also just from living in Tel Aviv, then Jerusalem, and being in Israeli universities, you meet people from Jewish backgrounds, like really from all over the world, whether that's because their families or their roots are from there or because they themselves made Aliyah. I've been able to make a lot of friends from who are Latin American. I know an IDC also has a very diverse Olim community that I'm sure Neely can attest to, but you can meet French Olim, you can meet Latin American, European, Russian. And I think that's something that's very cool about making Aliyah is that you realize the breadth and the cool diversity of the Israeli and the Jewish world. I know, you want your comfort and like I go every minyan, every Shabbat. My husband and I go to the JLIC in Jerusalem. It's not like we're only going to Hebrew speaking congregations, but something very cool that during the week we meet people whose family stories cover so many different types of Jewish narratives and Jewish places. So I think that's something very cool. It's not just to be in the Teaneck of Israel, but also to experience Israel in its diversity and the Jewish world in its diversity.
Great. And you touched on Shabbat, which I think we want to share a little bit about as well. What is Shabbat like on campus? Like Ariel, you mentioned you're in Jerusalem. A lot of Hebrew students do live in South Jerusalem in the Baca area or can participate in JLIC there. So maybe not on campus, but for you, it would be in Jerusalem. Do you want to speak to that? And then we
for
can
sure.
spread some of the campus life in other
So
places.
Jerusalem, JLIC for us is Jewish life in the city. So it's both students, people, I guess, also in services, whether or not that's national service or the army, and people working. And it's like more of a local neighborhood thing rather than a consolidated campus. And it's like a really, really nice community. My husband had his call up there. Even it's a new community. It's only been like around 2 years. But every week there's a minyan, whether or not that's in the shul or at the amazing rabbi and Rebbitzins home. And throughout the week there are different lectures, different events, Torah learning options, Beit Midrash. And what's amazing is that you can really take an active role in it. I'm currently in a fellowship through it. And most of the people in the fellowship are talking about, making a community for young couples or Torah learning. I'm personally running a project that, bridges the gap between many Anglos and Olim, and feeling connected to Israeli current events, because often there is a distance. So again, you can really spearhead whatever project you find interesting and relevant, and they really enable like a diverse group of projects for its congregants. So you can do your own thing. You can go to university, work here, whatever, but every weekend or throughout the week, you can have a concentrated community, which is really nice.
Great. Let's hear from some other campuses because this is a good one. Neil, you want to speak to Shabbat in Herzliya?
Yeah, Shabbat, and also I'll answer Limudei Kodesh in regards to Reichman University. There are no Judaic classes that I know of. In Reichman University, you study like the degree that you're in, but we have a thriving community similar to Ariella, what she was saying about JLIC. It's not necessarily like Reichman University, JLIC of Reichman University, but it's JLIC Herzliya. So in Herzliya, there are a lot of Reichman University students. We have some Tel Aviv University students. We also have a lot of lone soldiers, lone Sherut, but not Sherut. We have young professionals. So our community started 8 years ago, and has really grown to a lot of different things. And I'd say like Shabbat is the best part of living here. We have 2 minyanim. We have a minyan on campus and off campus. One is a little bit more campus oriented, so for a bit of the younger crowd, and then we have an older minyan for young professionals, newly married couples, people who want to be in a little bit more of an Israeli shul. And then Shabbat day, we have one shul, like one minyan, a big kiddush afterwards. We have mincha, we have shiurim. Also during the week, like I think, thank God there's no lack of limudei kodesh, even though you're not necessarily getting it in school, but you really can get it through learning, whether it's learning on campus during lunch or it's different nightly shiurim, learning, social events like Herzliya is really popping. And I think something similar to what Ariella said is because it's still in its early stages, there's a lot of room for growth and a lot of room for people to like really be involved. I was president last year, and I think there are different things that you can really do and a lot of different paths you can take. also specifically because everyone listening and on here, like there is a whole new generation coming to Israel, and since October 7th, like it's really even more popular than it was, I think, when we all came. So it's really cool, and there are a lot of different things to do. And I think like because of the more people coming, each community is growing even more than it was. I think like the people on this panel are all different huge communities that are growing for Olim and also have different types of people. Like Ariella made a joke, like it's not the Teaneck of Israel. And I think it's cool that like every place has a lot of different people from a lot of different places, regardless of like if you're American, if you're British, if you're from different places, just because Israel's kind of the place to be these days.
Great. Anyone else? Maybe we'll shift then to do one last question. I'm sorry that we didn't get to answer all of the questions in the chat. We'll, at the end, in just a few minutes, we'll share with you where you can hopefully get some of those answers that were an answer today. But can anyone just speak in these last few minutes to dorming versus living off campus? Where do you live? How did you make that decision? Esty?
I live off campus. I personally love to host, and I really wanted the space and the freedom to be able to host. But thank God on campus, we have such an amazing community. We have a brand new couple who are now the av and invite of the dorms in campus, and they're really so wonderful. And there's a huge group of people who live on campus. There's a huge group of people who live off campus. It really depends on like what slab of life you're in and what you want from an apartment. People who live on campus have a really great time because they can go home in between classes, which sounds really nice. But within Givat Shmuel, like a huge part of our community lives in different buildings throughout Givat Shmuel. It's super normal. And like pricing here also, thank God, is not so crazy. So it's very doable to live off campus, and financially it's very comparable.
Great.
In Reichman, I can speak to this. I've lived off campus for all 3 years that I've been here, but they're beautiful dorms. They're single dorm rooms. There are a few double, but I think similar to SD, like hosting and having my apartment be somewhere that I wanted to be. I think something cool about JLICs, a lot of them in Israel, are it's not the same as in the States where it's very campus central. I think a lot of times there's another place where a lot of things take place, or it's normal to walk to campus or to have friends from different places. Because again, people are doing a lot of different things within these communities. So I tend to recommend off campus, but I also think it depends. If you really want to be part of that campus, like you want your kitchen, you want things all in one place, then it's better. But I think for a little bit more of like community, it's easier to be off campus.
Thank you all so much. I opened up a big question there at the end, and I'm sure there's more to discuss, and we'd love to hear about dorming in other places. But for now, we are going to say thank you so much to our panelists for offering your insights this evening in Israel, morning in New York, depends where else you are around the world. And I want to share with you how you can get your questions answered if you still have questions after today. Visit us on collegeinisrael.org. That's our JLIC's College in Israel site. You can visit each university has a page on our site with Q&A answered by the university admissions departments themselves, so you can get questions answered about admissions, but also about tuition and housing and health insurance and so many different things. And follow us on Instagram, join our WhatsApp group. You could pick up your phone right now and scan the QR code right there and join our WhatsApp group for further information about more sessions like this. Hopefully we'll have another student panel and we'll have more info sessions, and just continue to share information with you as it changes, as we just explore new aspects of that. And we're really here for you. I don't have it up here on this screen, but you can also email any questions to us that you did not get answered today. So that's info@collegeisrael.org, info@collegeinisrael.org. You can also contact us through the website or through the Instagram, and you can ask your questions that didn't get answered today, and we'd love to try to get those answered for you. So thank you again so much to our panelists. Thank you all for being here, and good luck with your College in Israel journey.
Appreciate everyone's time, and we will send a follow-up email to everyone who registered for today's event.